Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock on Thursday, September 12th, 2024. We have a quorum, so I'll call this library board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So I will make a motion that we approve the agenda as shown. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any changes, corrections? All right, hearing none, then all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, same sign. All right, approval of the minutes from last week's meeting, which are printed there. And I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as shown.
So move.
And I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion, corrections that need to be made that anybody's aware of? All right, hearing none, then all in favor of approving the minutes from last month, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, let's get into the financial report. April?
We are 67.49% through 2024, and our budget is approximately 66.01% expended. Bills paid during August included $154 to Demco for book processing supplies, $1,482 to Gog Sheet Metal for HVAC unit repairs, $175 to Minnesota Elevator to replace an emergency phone battery in the phone in the elevator, $455 to Traxium for the library cards that won the library card contest, and $2,820 to Schultz Plumbing to replace the water fountain next to the service desk, which was an expenditure that you had approved at your June meeting. We also purchased a new microfilm reader for $5,881, which included the PC for that reader as well, with funds from the Mellon Foundation grant. And we also paid $500 to the Minnesota Library Association for annual conference attendance for the reference and youth service librarians, and $329 to the American Library Association for core forum conference attendance for me. I also will note that the City Council had a work session at their after their August 20th meeting, and they didn't have any comments on the library's budget as approved by the board. And then I just wanted to also note, I took a look at, the fact that we're 67.49% through the year and 66% expended is kind of a close margin. But when you consider that the furniture purchases for the meeting room and the security cameras, which we paid half of that project already as a deposit, those items are coming from the library's fund balance. We're actually closer to approximately 61% spent.
Well, that's good, because I was going to ask about that, because I noticed in years past, we've been about 5% under, and we were still under this year, so not a big deal, but thanks for explaining that. That brings it more in line with where we normally are at.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff going out this month. One question I had is on the HVAC unit repairs. It seems like every month we're having an HVAC unit. Are we in any danger of the thing going out on us, or?
So this is for the HVAC unit above the hallway that leads between the children's department and the main library. And this is one we're watching closely. It's not one that we've replaced in recent years. This one is about 20 years old, so it's getting on
Okay.
its replacement time. So our maintenance technician has been keeping the city building official informed of all the
Okay.
repairs we're doing this one, so that we can keep an eye on replacement.
Because once we start getting nickel and dimed, it's probably a time to start evaluating that.
Right.
So how
Yeah.
many HVAC units does the library have?
It's between 6 and 8.
Wow.
I have a list of them, but it's kind of by section of the
Right.
library. Like for instance, the older building with the children's department has 2 units, one for the children's room and one for the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame. And then there are several over the main part of the library, 2 of which were replaced within the last couple of years.
So then, since we have so many, maybe in future when you indicate there's costs going out for repairs, you can indicate which one,
Sure.
so that we don't get confused, because I only thought there was a couple, and then it's like, so. That would help, so then that way if we look back on records, we could say, oh, there's, each one has gotten a little bit of work here and there, It's not the same one every time.
For the minutes, then, this is unit number 6.
All right, any other questions on the financial report? All right, then we'll move on to the library department activities report and statistics.
So our collection development librarians, which includes our youth services librarian, our reference librarian, and our assistant director, Megan, all attended training for the Collection HQ software on August 14th and 28th. Collection HQ is a collection management tool that helps us analyze our collection use and focus our purchasing and weeding efforts in the library. So what it helps us do is run reports that show us which items are circulating well and are most used and in possible need of replacement, which items may be out of date based on the topic and age of the items, and then also which items aren't being used. And then it also has some tools for us to analyze the percentage of our collection that has focus on DEI topics, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've started to work with that. That tool is provided by TDS, so there's no additional cost to us from that. They're using state funding to support that for us. And right now we they started a 3-year contract with the tool, so we'll have a while to learn it and use it. We're really excited about it. It's, we can run reports from our integrated library system, but this offers a little more analytics to us than is available and kind of takes some of that work off the librarian's shoulders.
So why the focus on the DEI topic? Is that something that's built into the program, or was it something that was asked for us to be looked at, or are we just being proactive in case anybody asks? We'll have that at the ready.
It's built into the program, but it allows us to be proactive.
Okay.
And we're considering that we want our collection to represent our community, but also give a window to the greater world.
Okay.
And then that new equipment for the memory lab has started to arrive thanks to the Mellon Foundation grant. We have received the new microfilm scanner and computer and monitor, and those are now up and running. And we are in process with the mobile memory lab. We've received several of those items, and we're working to get that all set up as well. And then we are turning our attention now to looking at the pod for the memory lab, the enclosure, as well as the study room pods, and looking at our space and how we can make that work. And then our programming and technology services librarian has done a lot of great work building partnerships with organizations including Brown County Historical Society, the State Street Theater, the Grand, Luca Books, and more. And he's working with One New Ulm to plan another human library event for 2025. And the Friends of the Library had a meeting yesterday and approved a donation to help support that program. So we'll have that available for you to approve the next time donations are approved. And then just a note that the city moved all of our fax lines to digital fax lines, which slightly changed the process of faxing on the staff end, but that didn't have a disruption in the service that our patrons saw. It was a pretty quick turnover. And then I just wanted to note in our statistics that library staff took 86 questions on mobile devices during August. So for us, that can include things like helping patrons with settings, logins, and more. Our programming and technology services librarian assisted a patron who had questions about how her smart TV was interacting with her VPN, her virtual private network. And I took questions about which e-reader to buy. So it's often challenging to answer some of those questions because of the wide variety of devices and tools that our patrons are using and the various skill levels and experience that our staff have. Because it's kind of hit and miss with some of these things that we can't necessarily spend time training on because it's not something we receive frequently, but we may have some personal experience with some of them. So I just wanted to point that out, that that's part of the services that we're providing. And it's kind of hard to draw a hard and fast line as to where the technology help starts and ends with some of these things, but we do what we can and then use the research skills that we have to try and point our patrons in the direction of more information.
So if you find that you can't help them, do you take it upon yourself then to say you'll research it and get back to them, or do you refer them to somebody else who might be able to help them more?
It kind of depends on the situation. Like for this person who had questions about her TV at home, we don't make house calls. We don't invite people to bring in their TVs and hook them up in the library for us to troubleshoot. So it kind of depends on, what the situation is too. In that instance, if we couldn't answer that, we might point her in the direction of her provider for that VPN, or we might point her in the direction of the TV's manual, or a combination of those things. So it's
Okay.
on a basis by basis. And then I just wanted to point out, now that we have Collection HQ, we've been focusing on weeding the collection again. So librarians, we did a total of 979 items in August, which is great. Weeding is really important to make sure that we have a collection of items that are in good shape and appealing to our patrons, and that they're easy to locate, that they're not buried in unused items. So we weed based on how often things are getting used, the condition of the items, and then the accuracy of the information contained within. And it's important to us because the total number of our items in our collection also factors into what our TDS fees are each year. That's part of the formula that's used. And we currently have about 74,000 items in our collection.
You try and keep it within a certain range then, so you don't go into the next bracket?
The rough goal for us has been to keep it under 80,000 items. We have been hovering in that 72 to 75 for quite a while now. But we would like to get even a leaner and meaner collection, because there are...
That brings up the question then, does the library even have room for 80,000?
It would be tight.
Yeah.
There are sections now that are quite tight, so it would be full shelves at that point, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, April? Is that good? You good on that?
Good to go.
Any other questions for April then? All right, then we'll move on to programming.
All right. Our genealogy club meets on Thursday, September 19th at 6:30 p.m. This month, they'll be meeting at Martin Luther College's library to learn about the resources available there. Our evening story time meets on Tuesday, September 24th evening sensory story time meets on Tuesday, September 24th at 6 p.m. And our morning sensory playtime meets on Thursday, September 26th at 10 a.m. So those focus on a lot of play with the stories, whereas our normal story times focus on songs and the stories themselves. So this is a little bit more active for kids who thrive in that kind of setting. And those have been popular for us, and we offer each of them once a month. And then our weekly story times meet on Mondays at 10:30 a.m. and Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m.
All right, any questions for April on the programming? All right, we'll move on to the Brown County Library Board update.
The Brown County Library Directors met with the Brown County Commissioners on August 29th to make our 2025 appropriations request. The Brown County Library Board requested an increase of $5,000, and the Commissioners were in favor of the increase. And I just want to note that Commissioner Borkert recognized the public library's programming, and all of the Commissioners expressed their appreciation for our services to our Brown County residents.
All right, any other updates on the Brown County Library Board? All right, now we get to the fun stuff. We'll go into the action items. It'll be a little more interactive here. First up is resolution number 2024-25, approving the updated lost and found policy. This is the second reading and adoption. The library director recommends that the library board adopt the updated lost and found policy to indicate that lost and found items may be stored in the library staff's room in addition to the library director's office and the library's safe. This will improve the library staff ability to assist patrons when the library director is not available to open the office. The policy was last updated in April 2024, so it's fairly recent. The attached policy draft shows the proposed change in red, and if you look at the policy draft, it's the 3 words that were added in there: library staff room, added to the locations where the lost and found stuff can be found. So I will entertain a motion then to approve the updated lost and found policy.
I'll move.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? This one's going to be pretty easy then. All right, so then, Dustin, you want to call the roll?
Sarah,
Yes.
Dustin, yes. Vince,
Yes.
Yvonne,
Yes.
Nanan,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Carl.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Let's go to the next item. This one, Resolution 2024-26, approving the collection development policy. This also is a second reading and adoption. The library director recommends that the library board adopt the attached draft collection development policy. The existing policy was last updated in 2002. We're talking ancient here. The library director has rewritten the policy to be current with best practices and the new Minnesota Statute 134.51, access to library materials and rights protected. Both the existing and draft collection development policies are attached, as well as that Minnesota Statute 134.51, access to library materials and rights protected, and a mini text article that provides more context. Access to library materials and rights protected, an explanation for Minnesota library workers. The city attorney reviewed both policies and suggested no changes to the draft policy. So I'm going to waive a reading of this. It's a pretty lengthy document. So I will entertain a motion, though, to accept or approve the new collection development policy.
So moved.
We have a second,
Second.
and we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion? All right, I have one under the selection criteria, which is list a whole bunch of bullet points, and it kind of goes into a pretty good overview of the selection. But one of the items I was wondering about is when you're making the selection, do you look at the availability of what's available at other libraries in the TDS system to see like, oh, there's a boatload of them out there, we don't need to get one?
When we are replacing items, we do. When it's kind of initial purchase, we are thinking about usually the demand of our local patrons for that item.
Okay. So if somebody's requesting it, there must be someone local that wants it, and there's probably other people that would want it, so,
Right.
okay.
Yep, so if, if it's one of James Patterson's first books, but 15 other libraries have it, and it's just a replacement for us, that's a time where we might not replace that item because it is easily available to us, but if it's the newest James Patterson, then that's probably something that we'll buy.
Okay. And that would probably go also if you have multiple copies and you're only replacing like one copy of it or something?
Right, there are some things that we just automatically buy multiple copies off of the bat because the demand will be there and it will be consistent for a while. And then when demand falls off, then we can get rid of, however many copies we have that are grubby at that point.
I also have to comment, I found this interesting that under the children, young adult sections, we got a little Latin in there, in loco parentis, which I thought meant crazy parent, but I had to look it up, and it was in the place of a parent. When I first saw that in loco parentis and I thought of crazy parent, I thought maybe it's like the Geico commercial with the ant problem. Expired. So that's all I have for any questions or discussion.
I just had one, in the weeding evaluation criteria, there are limitations imposed by lack of storage or display space. Does that come into, when, just as you just mentioned, some places are really there's a confined amount of space, then we rely on do you rely on the other libraries in our system?
We do, to a point. If we're getting a lot of requests for something that's, older or whatnot, or, even more recent, we would be more likely to purchase that. If it's one request once a year, then, less likely based on space. And then that's another situation where, we look at, do we really need 3 copies of this book anymore? Not based on the circulation. So for space reasons, we can, get rid of 2.
Thank you.
I wanted to share that I spoke with April yesterday about this particular policy and in general other policies of the library as to where this policy is going to be found and how it can be found and who it's available to. And it was a good discussion for me to learn some of the things I guess I wasn't totally aware of. And perhaps, April, if you could summarize some of that information that we spoke about for the board, I think it may be helpful to some.
Sure. Carl and I talked about, if there's somewhere where the policies are currently available to the public, and they are not, we would certainly provide them upon request. We do have access to, to give that to anyone. But the goal for us right now is to get them all on our website so they're easily accessible to patrons and staff from one point. The reason we've waited on that is because we are currently looking at reorganizing our website ahead of translation, which is one of the activities in the Memory Lab Network grant. So once we have the website reorganized, our plan is to have the policy manual available on it.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion, questions? All right, Dustin, I'll call the roll.
Sarah,
Yes.
Dustin, yes. Vince,
Yes?
Yvonne,
Yes.
Manon,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Carl.
All right. Motion passes then. Now, the next item is similar in nature. It's resolution number 2024-27, approving the reconsideration of library resource or material policy. And once again, second reading and adoption. The library director recommends that the library board adopt the new draft reconsideration of library resource or material policy. The existing policy was last updated in 2008. The library director has rewritten the policy to be current with best practices and the new Minnesota statute 134.51, access to library materials and rights protected. Both the existing and draft reconsideration of library resource or material policies are attached. The city attorney reviewed both policies and suggested no changes to the draft policy. So I will make a motion that we approve the reconsideration of the library resource or material policy. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a couple seconds, okay. Any discussion? All right, I've got some questions. So all right, let's see, in the new one, let's see, under 1, 2, 3, on the 4th paragraph, it goes into an appeal, the appeal process. And then the last sentence in that is the decision of the library director is final and NUPL will not entertain requests for reconsideration relative to the same complaint for 3 years following the initial request for reconsideration. I think that should be a separate paragraph because the paragraph starts with being the appeal process, but then this basically says, it summarizes and says the decision of the library director is final. So I think that should be separated out. That's an easy change. One of the questions I had is if you look at looking at the form, at the end of the form, it says the library director, please indicate the dates request for reconsideration was reported to, and you have a number of organizations there. There's no mention of that in the policy itself. And I'm wondering if that should be mentioned before they find out when they're filling out the form to say, oh, I didn't know that it's going to all these.
It's in the last paragraph of
Is
the
it?
policy, yep.
Oh, yeah. All right, I missed that. Sorry. Thanks for clarifying that. All right,
And
good.
that is in the new statute too, that it must be reported to
Right.
the Department of
Okay,
Education.
but I just didn't know that people, and there was also an indication of the privacy notice where it says that this request for reconsideration will be considered public data and may be disclosed to third parties. So, that, depending on the person's stance on privacy, they may just decide, wow, since it's going to be public, I'm not going to do it.
And we put that on there kind of as a general disclosure to any time we're taking patron information. It's also on our library card application.
Okay.
Just so they're aware of that. But the information that the state would require is the name of the item and the reason for the challenge, as well as what the library's action taken was.
All right, that's all I have. Anybody else?
I just happen to think, with respect to persons who can file a challenge, I believe the policy restricts it to members of the community, citizens of New Ulm, and or those who hold a library card. Is there any restriction on geographic range of the card holder? Or is it possible that someone from out of state could ask for cards and begin sending in challenges?
That is a possibility. Our current out-of-state cards are considered transient cards, and so they're good for, a range of 3 to 6 months, depending on the situation of the patron. We do consider those people our patrons. They're New Ulm Public Library card holders. So that's certainly something the board could decide to restrict.
Or it could be something that somebody moved out of the area, they were in the area, they moved out of the area, they still have a valid library card. That's another,
Come back and see their children and come to the library because they're here for an extended period of time and want to read books or magazines.
And
or
want a challenge? No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
Just come back just to challenge.
Well, you never know.
One thing about the statute, though, is it really limits the reasons why you can challenge. And so I think someone who has maybe not the greatest intentions would be the biggest limit they're gonna run up against, is just what's in the statute now that we have to comply with.
It's good.
want to go down the rabbit hole, but a non-resident card holder, it would seem to me, if we wanted to look at it even further, might consider having to have had a certain amount of activity on their card in order to be eligible to file the challenge, but that's
And that's
something
not
else.
something we track.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains that.
We do, one of our goals is to update our circulation policy that talks about who can and can't have cards and how we issue them and what kind of card is issued and what is limited or not limited by that card, namely the overdrive collection or digital collection. So that is one of our policies on our list to update. And once we've updated that, it's possible we could come back to this policy and do an update once that information is clearer for us as well.
Sure.
I think those two kind of walk hand in hand with your question about those card holders.
Okay.
but the second paragraph also kind of addresses the, from patrons who reside outside the New Ulm area and do not have a card. It kind of indicates that they can wish an exception, but that has to be they have to submit a written petition to the library director, and then they'll have to go through the process of, whether that exception is approved or not.
The reason I wrote it that way was to include our rural patrons, and we do have patrons who reside in Nicollet County, where we are the closest library to them, but, and we also have patrons who live in Blue Earth County but have a New Ulm address, so it's kind of a challenge to make sure that we're allowing, the patrons who are using us as their library to have this right for their library use, while limiting it to our patrons who have kind of a vested interest in the library.
But when you want to make sure that you've got the local community covered in the broad
Right.
sense of the definition. And that brings up one question on that last paragraph that I had, that I wanted to have separated out. It indicates that the decision of the library director is final, and NUPL will not entertain requests for reconsideration relative to the same complaint for 3 years following the initial request for reconsideration. So does that mean by the same person, or would it be regardless of person? So say someone says, this is just an example that, we don't want Huck Finn to be, because of the nature or the verbiage used. And then, you reject that complaint, but then somebody else comes in within a year and also says, I don't want Huck Finn. It's somebody different. So when you say reference to the same complaint, is that,
The same item for the same reason.
okay,
That would limit groups whose focus is on getting certain items out of collections.
right? Because it could be like a conspiracy going on where, okay, you do it this week, you do it next week, and we'll just keep barraging them and.
Yep.
Okay.
And the reason that we chose 3 years is that that would allow for some changeover in the library board, so that it would not be the same group of people reviewing the same request
Oh,
when it was made, so that,
makes sense.
because that could change opinion of the members of the board.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, kind of a wrap-up on this then is, how often does the request for reconsideration come through? I mean, have you had any in your term as the library director?
I've had one when it was in between library directors in the summer of 2018. And I and the children's librarian reviewed the complaint. It was on an item in the children's collection that they were concerned was not appropriate for the age level. So we looked at, the professional resources and did everything according to the policy as was written at that time. And wrote a formal response back, and the patron didn't have any further comment on it.
So overall, it's not a lot. We don't get a lot of it, so,
There are libraries that do experience more, but
I'm
for
sure.
us, we have not in
Okay.
my time.
all right, any other discussion?
I just want to compliment you on your work on this policy and the previous one. They're such important policies, and even though there haven't been concerns, tomorrow could be the day when things change. We just don't know. And the new policies as written are, they're so complete and so thorough, and I just wanted to say, well done, thank you.
Thank you. I really was grateful for the feedback of our professional librarians as well. Whenever I present a new policy to you, it's after they've reviewed my drafts as well and had their time for comments and questions too. So that's very helpful to me.
Yep. I'm sure to them.
Yeah, and I think I read in there somewhere too that they indicate that the policies will be reviewed on a regular basis, and I don't know how often these are reviewed, but the ages of 2002 and 2008, that, to me, that's, it's time to update them.
A lot of libraries have a policy on how often policies are reviewed. And we have a lot of policies that need to be reviewed that are old like this. And so my goal is, over the next several years, is to get all of them through the board review and update what needs to be updated. And then based on where we are at with those policies, kind of overall at that time, look at a policy for that, so that we can just plan that we're looking at these 5 policies during this year,
Right. And if there's no changes that need to be made, if they're still valid and considered up to date, then we can just acknowledge that, hey, these have been reviewed, no changes being made.
Yep.
Right.
So,
Can you give us a ballpark number about how many policies there are in total?
I would guess about 25. I think that could be condensed.
not too bad.
I'm sure.
Not too bogged down in
No.
red tape. All right, any other?
I was going to just add, and it's, I think probably because I'm from the old school, but once I think the updates are completed and where you want them and available some place on the website, it may not be a bad idea to think about, discuss the possible codification of all the policies into something of a manual of sorts with it organized such that when you refer to a certain policy, instead of referring to a particular paragraph or page, that you're referring to a letter or a number so that you can more easily identify areas of concern or issue relative to the policies, individual policies.
Yeah, maybe having like a log in there that indicates when it was reviewed and if no changes are made or if changes were made. But we can get into more of that
Yeah.
minutia later on. All right, anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the reconsideration of the library resource or material policy with the one change noted of separating that one sentence out into its own paragraph. So Dustin, you want to call the roll?
Sarah,
Yes.
Dustin, yes. Vince,
Yes.
Yvonne,
Yes.
Manon,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Carl.
Yes.
Great, motion passes. So now we'll go on to the next one. The next few should be pretty quick. Resolution number 2024-28, accepting Optimist Club of New Ulm donation. This is the first reading and adoption. During August 2024, the Optimist Club of New Ulm made a donation of $654 to New Ulm Public Library. The library plans to use these donations to purchase Wonder Books, which are books with built-in audio components, and Wazoodles, I just love saying that, and which are handheld devices that provide learning and play through all audio approaches. The library, and there's pictures in of both of those in the resolution here. The Library Board of the New Ulm Public Library accepts these donations with gratitude to the Friends of the New Ulm Public Library. So,
I'm sorry, there is a typo though.
Yeah,
It should be
it's-
with gratitude to the
to the
Optimist
Optimist Club, I was gonna mention that, it's okay. So, that's one change that we'll make sure that gets noted. So, I will accept a motion to accept the Optimist Club of New Ulm donation.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, so will the board will accept the Optimist Club of New Ulm donation with the change noted that it's to be the donation with gratitude to the Optimist Club. So Dustin, you want to call the roll?
Sarah,
Yes.
Dustin, yes. Vince,
Yes?
Yvonne,
Yes.
Manon,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Carl.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next one is an interesting one. Resolution number 2024-29, the approving of removal of book drop trees. That's, people, that probably sparks people's interest. What the heck is that? During, this is the first reading and adoption. During the recent August 29th storm, 2 large limbs fell from the trees in the library's book drop structure, and there's pictures included in the resolution. The city's engineering department recommends removal of both trees. The southern tree has base rot, and the northern tree does not have much structure left. The street department will complete this work. The library director recommends addressing the area when the library staff work on a strategic plan activity to create, update the outdoor space. And then I had asked April about, will there be any charge to the library for this removal? And she indicated there will not be, correct? So,
Yeah, the trees are small enough that the street department has the equipment to handle them.
Okay. So it looks like you actually took the one picture while it was still storming?
Yes.
So did someone notify you, or did you guys hear it crack and,
We did not hear it crack, but we looked out that door and saw one branch down, and then 5 minutes later looked again, and the second one was down, so.
and it looks like somebody was riding in the rain out there, they had their
Somebody's
bike
little
out there.
bike is still there.
So luckily, no cars were hit or anything, any other
Yes.
damage, so. All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve the removal of the book drop trees.
I'll move.
That was quick. Do I have a second? Motion, is- okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So the staff have talked about some ideas for that space, and we'll bring it back to you when we have done more research on that, but, we're not sure what that might look like yet.
The idea of what they've done on the outside of the space with the books and for the book drop, that's really
That's
cool.
really cool.
So if they can come up with something just as creative for the inside, and I'm sure they will. All right, Dustin, you want to call the roll?
Sarah? Yes. Dustin, yes. Vince?
Yes?
Yvonne?
Yes.
Manon?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Oh, this is proving to be an interesting term for me, because we removed the boulevard trees, and now we're removing the trees in the back. So I didn't realize landscaping was part of part of what I signed up for. All right, the next resolution. What's that?
There you go.
Next resolution, 2024-30, approving replacement of the panic button system. First reading and adoption. The library's current panic button system runs on a landline and equipment that is no longer reliable and has recently failed routine system test. The city IT department recommends replacing the current panic button system with a system that is hardwired into the library's fire alarm panel. The new system would be faster and more reliable. The library currently has 3 panic buttons. This project would add a 4th button to the system. The city IT department recommends awarding the project to Precision Alarm because they currently manage the library's fire alarm panel and other alarms for the city. Precision Alarm's attached quote totals $1535. This is an unbudgeted project. The library director recommends awarding the project to Precision Alarm and using the library's reserve fund to pay for the expense. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We can, if you want to look at the quote, you can, but it's not terribly exciting. Basically explains, provide and install 4 hardwired panic alarm switches. The switches will be connected to the Starlink cellular communicator and have no other interface or audible functions. This is the most secure and fastest way to get the signal to the monitoring service. Regular testing of these sensors should be conducted. So I will entertain a motion to approve the replacement of the panic button system and the Precision Alarm quote.
So moved.
And I'll second that. Okay. Do we have any further discussion?
What led to the recommendation to add a 4th panic button?
We have panic button at the service desk, and it is kind of off to the side right now. And so thinking about staff being able to discreetly and quickly push that button led to the decision to have one on each side of the service desk, because we have 2 stations close together on one side and 1 station on the opposite side of that desk.
Okay, good.
So then, once the button is pushed, that sends a signal to,
The alarm company,
and then they will notify then the police?
yes,
Or, so the panic
dispatch,
button goes to the police then, right?
yes.
Okay. So you don't have gates that come down and everybody's locked in and, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so it is a silent alarm too, right? So the
Yes.
patrons wouldn't know.
No.
Okay. All right. So and the question I had is on, it says the quote indicated that the regular testing of these sensors should be conducted. Who does that? Does this company come in and do it, or do you do it and notify them, hey, we're testing this?
We can do it either way. I have kind of an end of year list of things that I take care of that need to be tested or batteries replaced for this kind of thing, and so that's on my list to test it annually. So usually I test it with the building maintenance
So do
technician.
you think annually is sufficient? Is that what this company recommends, or would it be monthly, or?
Yeah, no, when we've had them come out, they recommend annually.
Okay.
And then the system itself does kind of system tests, and that's how we knew it was failing, because the company that currently manages it for us kept getting those failure tests, so they were able to notify us that that was happening.
All right. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, then Dustin?
Sarah,
Yes.
Dustin, yes. Vince,
Yes.
Yvonne,
Yes.
Nanan,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Carl.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. The final motion for today is resolution number 2024-31, approving the 2025 library fees and fines schedule. First reading, we'll be not voting on this till next month. The City of New Ulm annually revises its schedule of fees. As part of this, the library is required to update its fees and fines schedule. The library director proposes the attached schedule for 2025 fees and fines, which includes the following changes: eliminating the meeting room rental fees, eliminating equipment rental fees, adding a note that there is no charge for local or toll-free number cover sheets. And we can explain that. I'll have April explain that in a minute. Changes proposed by library board members will be incorporated after second reading and adoption at the October 10th library board meeting. The schedule will then be submitted to the finance department for final approval by the city council. The library director plans to submit an updated meeting room rental agreement to the library board for final approval in its by its December 12th, 2024 meeting, as well as request that the library's equipment use policy be retired. And then these changes will all go into effect January 1st, 2025. And if you look at the fees themselves, you can see in the area of red what is being changed. So with the meeting room rental going to zero, equipment rental going to zero, and then the indication of the it used to be cover page, no charge, but it says no charge for local or toll-free numbers cover sheets. So that's basically just the cover sheet that would go with the fax, right?
Right.
So, since we don't have to vote on that, it's just, at least not on this meeting, we'll be voting on it next meeting. So people get a chance to review it. I do have a question though on the eliminating the meeting room and equipment rental fees. I mean, was that a big money draw for us?
No, I think if you look at the financial report, we're only like we've only received like 5% of our budgeted equipment rental fees for this year. Use of that has dropped dramatically over the past several years. And then the meeting room, I think we have budgeted this year to receive $5,000 in fees from that. And the bulk of that is actually New Cat's rental for the space in the library that goes into that revenue line. So really, we're only eliminating about $1,000 of budgeted
Okay,
revenue.
so they'll still pay their portion
Yep.
as part of the agreement, okay.
Yeah, that's in their lease agreement with the
Right.
city, with the library in the
So,
city.
and who knows, maybe by offering the meeting room for free, if people know about it, they'll get more usage and more people come to the library.
Right. And we'll, as we look at our study rooms, we'll likely either have to have a study room policy or adopt a portion of the meeting room policy to be a study room policy, because then we'll have these different sizes of spaces that are available for use for the public.
More policies.
Right.
All right. Anything else? Any other business? Anything that's cropped up in the course of this meeting? All right, not hearing anything, then we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.